This is Lorii from howcanyouFindLove.com, and today we are so privileged because we have special guests, and they're all wonderful people from Canada. And let's all welcome I should say Dr. Stephen and Miss Lesley. So, hello everyone.
Good morning.
Yes. What do you exactly do? Maybe you can share us your specialization, because a lot of people are confused about this Mars and Venus thing, and they're like the sexologist thing. Maybe we can start with ladies first. Lesley.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I am a love and relationship coach. I work with people in dating and relationships, and basically the focus is getting people really clear about where they are right now and really clear about where they want to go. And together we bridge the gap. Really, I'm about having people empowered and enabled to create the relationship of their dreams. And in the process, have a transformation in clarity and love and understanding and self-confidence. So that's what I'm really about. And part of that is the understanding is the differences between men and women, and the masculine and the feminine.
Doctor.
Yes, thank you, Lorii. So that's a great question. What is a sexologist? And I always joke and I say, my mom still asks me that question and my dad doesn't, because he doesn't want to know. But as a sexologist, what I'm trained into is I study people's sexual behaviors and their feelings. So basically what people do and how they feel about that. So that's kind of abstract. What it looks like in my day-to-day work is I've worked in sexual health clinics and do counseling around that, about healthy sexuality, healthy choices. My real passion is sharing my message of sexual empowerment with the world. And so what I do as a sexologist is I help people discover and create the sex life that they've always wanted and deserve. So what that looks like, it looks like a lot of writing, it looks like a lot of speaking and seminars and workshops and keynotes, and a lot of media as well. I also do coaching with couples, groups, and individual one-on-one people. So I love people, and people's sex life is a healthy part of their life, and often people are blocked, or they have questions, or they have concerns, or they don't know where to turn. And I'm in that privileged position to hold the space for those people so they can come to me and talk about things and work through the things in their life and actually have, the sex with the people that they want in their lives. That's what I do as a sexologist.
Mm-hmm. So my niche is for those people who are still looking for their soulmate. So for some people, they're a little conservative. They don't want to, start with sex right away. But anyway, we can all go around with that in a little bit. But Lesley, can you tell us the misconceptions about, having the perfect relationship? Or is there such a thing actually? Because like most people are always curious about, I want to meet Mr. Right or Miss Right, whatever.
Yeah, totally. It's such a great question. And I would say yes and no. I love what Ariel Ford has been talking about with wabi-sabi love, which is finding perfect love in the imperfect. So perfection in the imperfection, which is so realistic. I mean, perfect is boring, really. And when people are striving for perfect, they've got this list of everything they want, and it's got to be that way. It has people not present, not in the moment. You're not actually looking for what's great about people. You're looking for, do they match up with what I think, how it should go, whether that's in dating or in the relationship. So it kills love. Looking for this, striving for perfection kills love. And it has people not be free to just be themselves.
I agree. So time and again it has been proven, among the usual problems in relationships are finances and sex. Can you tell us, Dr. Stephen, what are the myths surrounding sex in a relationship so that my audience can, be more practical with what are their expectations in this area?
Yeah, and great question. Thank you, Lorii. and this comes up again and again and again, and some of the most common things that I hear from people that I work with or sending me questions and messages is, it started this way and now it's this. And I want to go back to this.
Uh-huh.
And, what I really talk to people on is, as sexual beings and with our partners, we evolve. And the sex that we have with our partners evolve. So, it's common when you're first in the relationship and you're hot and there's passion and you're aroused and it's awesome and you're loving it and you're like, oh my goodness, it's going to be like this forever. And then 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years later, you're like, remember what it was like way back then? I really want that hot, that passion. Like, where does that go? What happens with that? And so I think people often, look at themselves and look at their relationships as static. So this is the way it is now. I'm going to keep it in this box, and this is where I want it to stay. The reality is we as individuals evolve sexually. So, what worked for you, Lorii, a year ago or 5 years ago is different for what works for you now. And your partner, that's going to change too. So there's this myth that it's always going to be this euphoric, heated thing when it first happens, and it doesn't happen. And then what happens is people make it wrong because people don't have the skills, the tools, or the communication methods to actually powerfully deal with what's going on. So that's one of the biggest myths. The other one is looking at, the biggest thing is the communication thing. And sometimes people think that, and especially at the beginning when it's so hot and it just works and you're a match and you don't have to say anything and they can read my body and they know how to please me and all this magic stuff happens. And I don't need to have conversations about it because we're on the same page. But what happens as, you and your partner evolve differently and go in different places, you may not be as connected as you once were. And the way to deal with that is actually have powerful communication around that. And again, for a lot of people, that's strange because we've grown up in a really sex-negative society that dictates when we're allowed to talk about sex, with whom we're going to talk to sex about, and how we're going to talk about sex. So it's very different for people to actually look at it and be like, okay, so this is an important part of my life. And it's not where I want it to be. And I really don't know how to bring it up with my partner. Because, initially when you talk, you bring up sex, your partner's going to be like, oh my goodness, their mind's going to go a million places and like, what did I do wrong? They don't like me. They're not attracted to me. They're going to cheat on me. I'm not sexy. I'm fat. Like, our brains just go everywhere because we've grown up with this society where we're not able to actually communicate and develop that relationship with our partners around sex. So those are the two biggest ones. It's just a lack of understanding that we evolve and things are going to change. And let's just accept that and embrace that and deal with it powerfully. And the second thing is that there is a responsibility of actually being able to communicate. And you're not always going to be able to read your partner's mind or know exactly what they want. So those are the two biggest things that I come across.
Yeah. So you were saying communications. Who should actually initiate it? Is it the man or the woman who's supposed to talk? Because, obviously, man doesn't really like to talk.
Well, I would agree with you on one end. I think I think we've been conditioned socially that women are the talkers and men don't. They're a little bit more reserved. And I think it's really important that we enable and help each other in a partnership. So if one person is more vocal and the other person isn't, and that could change depending on the relationship. We really take that responsibility is a kind of big word about who should it be all the time. And the world that I live in is I don't like to make broad sweeping generalizations that this is the way it is in the man's role and the woman's role because it varies within the relationship. So, I always encourage people, if it's something that you're feeling, if it's something that's important to you, that you actually take it on and you communicate. Because if you're sitting there and I'm like waiting and I'm like, well, Lesley, you got to start. And then Leslie's sitting there and she says, well, Stephen, you got to start. Well, guess what? Nobody starts. Nothing happens. And that's when problems, build up on and there's resentment and all this other kind of stuff that goes on. So it's really, if you feel it in your heart, if it's something that's important, then I say, speak that into existence. Create a safe space where you can talk about it. So it's not right before sex where you're all hot and you're just like ready to go. And it's not right after sex so the person doesn't feel judged or made wrong because, that can be a buzzkill. but actually creating and carving out space where you can talk to your partner about sex when it's a non-sexual time. You can actually just be with each other and just talk about, what's so, and respect the reality of the relationship and the state that it's in.
Yeah. So Lesley, maybe you can, because you understand Mars and Venus, so maybe you can add something to that, like, in effect that communication will actually happen.
Yeah, so, I mean, under stress, men and women tend to cope with stress differently. Different areas of their brains get activated, of our brains get activated. Yeah. And so for men, it really is what John Gray, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, that with men, it's the fight or flight response. So you're either going to deal with the issue right then, or it's flight, which looks like going into the, what he calls the man cave, which is think about things and process it. And so sometimes when a man's in that place, when it's like, there's no way that I'm having this conversation right now, for the women, so for women, we deal with conflict by talking. That's how we resolve conflict, talking it out. And so the problem comes when you're in that moment and the man's like, I've got to be alone and think about this. And you're like, no, we got to talk about this. That creates conflict. So it's really respecting with your partner when is a good time to talk. And like Stephen said, and that might be different in some couples, it might be the man that wants to talk first and the woman's still thinking about things. So it really isn't that it's always one way. But you really have to know and respect your partner and have that open communication to know what works for the relationship.
So are you a proponent of having a set schedule for communicating? Let's say, I want to talk about this. When is the good time for you? Is that the way it is?
I don't know about a schedule, but just an open dialogue where there's no confrontation. I mean, when you're in the heat of the moment and something is wrong, it's hard to say, okay, well, let's schedule, on Tuesday, we're going to talk about this. But, it might be, okay, I respect that, you've got to go, if it's me and my partner, I respect that you're going to take some time and go and think about things, and let's just talk about this when we cool down. And that it's okay that it's not dealt with right there in the moment. That I recognize that as a woman, if he's going to deal with it by thinking first. Stephen, what would you say?
Yeah, and again, I think it's, creating the fundamental thing that I always talk about is creating a safe space for that person or that couple to talk. So yeah, so if it's, you're heated, you're upset, it's not going to work. If you're really turned on and aroused, like your brain is not functioning on a level that, I think is going to be constructive and be able to create for some. So for some people who I work with people who have like super busy lives and they're like run, they got kids, they're full-time jobs, they're everything, they're volunteer stuff. And sometimes it actually works of like, once a month, we're going to go to a coffee shop or we're going to go for a walk together. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is sex. And that's something that we can have. And that's just really what works for them. Other people, like as Lesley said, it's like, they can have that open dialogue and they can talk about it in a place that actually works. And, Lesley talking about the man cave, I think that does happen. And on both sides, like, sometimes women are going to be shut down, not going to communicate. Sometimes men are going to be shut down and not communicate and go in their man cave. And really then it becomes, the person who's not in the cave, so to speak, is, kind of to coax them out and to create that really safe space for them to feel comfortable in communicating and really honor wherever they're at. Because often people are like, well, I feel this and I'm right and I'm upset or I'm hurt, so you need to understand where I'm at. And that often doesn't work because if that person's shut down, they're not going to want to meet you where you're at. You actually have to, match them where they're at to actually have that constructive conversation. And sometimes, like Lesley said, that means you got to let things settle a little bit and calm down before you do have that conversation.
Yeah. So one of the most controversial topic among singles is when to start being intimate with someone you started dating. Is there actually a pattern that should be followed by these singles?
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I love this question, and I get it often because I say as soon as possible. And why I say that is because when we're talking about intimacy, I'm going to make a distinction between intimacy and having sex. I can have intimacy with someone when I meet them for coffee and I talk to them and I'm open with who I am, about my life, the things that I'm, good at, maybe some of the things that I'm not so good at and I'm insecure about and I'm worried about. That's intimacy. If we break down intimacy into, the syllables, it's into, me, you, see. So, and I'm a stickler about language when it comes to sex because there's so much confusion and people use different words for whatever. So intimacy, I say right away and as soon as possible. I think the question we're looking at is, when do you have sex with that person, right? And that's a great question. My thought is there's no process. There's no, well, you got to wait, look at your calendar and sit it down and put 2 days. I'm going to the second date, I'm going to kiss him and then I'm going to, have sex with him 2 months in or whatever the case, the situation. Or the guy's like, oh, if I have sex with her right away, then that's not the type of woman that I want to be with because the woman that all this crap that we have around sex, what it means, the timing of it, there's so much weight put on it. And really what I encourage people to do is to just kind of get rid of all the messages that they've been taught and when is right and when is wrong and all that crap and just really honor where they're at. And again, have communication with their partner about, what they're comfortable with. And the other thing that's really important is what does sex look like? Because when I say sex, and I'm talking to a partner and I say sex, it may mean something very different to them. It may be we're naked together or it may be penetrative sex, or it may be oral sex, or it may be, making out and touching each other. It really, and that's why, again, the language that we use and, being able to be specific, and it takes something, right? Because sometimes it's awkward and be like, well, never had this kind of conversation. I just kind of get in relationships and then sex happens and then I kind of look back afterwards and I'm like, okay, and that was good. It was hot. I liked it. But again, there's nothing there to really talk about it. And it's going to be different for some people. Some people get in a relationship, they have sex on the first date. The other, another relationship, they'll wait for however, 4 months, a year, whatever. It's really honoring where you're at and honoring where your partner's at and actually, talking about that and having it a co-creative process. So and again, it all boils down to communication because one person may have an idea of when is the right time and what sex is. And the other person has an idea of, what the right time is and what sex is for them. And that can clash. I always talk about we each have a unique sexual fingerprint. So we're all different. And as many, books that you read or magazines that are the top 10 things or the right way to handle this or that, it's garbage. It's garbage. And when it comes to sex, I always say there's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's just your way. And when you're looking at having sex with someone else, that's something that you need to spend time with yourself and think about and just be aware of where you're at. And then again, have that conversation with that person, find out where they're at, and then create something that works for the both of you. Because really, when we're in a relationship, it's a partnership and it's a team. And if one of your team members isn't aware of what the other team member is doing, you're not going to win. And, it's really important I really encourage people to, really honor themselves, figure out what works for them, get rid of all the crap that people tell you or you've read or your friends or your parents, whatever it is, and just really honor where you're at.
Yeah, that's very valid points. Lesley, I would imagine maybe you have also some sharing about affecting one's decision about, when to have sex and everything based on from their parents. Is that something they're,
It was just cutting out, Lorii. Can you say that again? When to have sex?
So is that also based on the parents' values? Something that they have learned way back before. Is that because like you were talking about a caveman mentality a while ago, like the earlier stages. So is it also the same thing as sex? Like, people are, basing their judgment based from what they have learned when they were still younger?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of us is conditioned by our upbringing and what our experience is. I mean, most of us is. And then there's, yeah, the parts of our brain that are, you know, like thousands and thousands of years old. And so as a Mars Venus coach and training with John Gray, you know, he talks about a specific system, you know, like Steve Harvey, he's got the wait 90 days before you have sex. And, you know, there's all these like catchy, trendy rules, right? People like rules, something to follow.
Yeah.
And John's got, you know, 5 stages of dating where commitment comes before intimacy. And so for me, I love what Stephen was saying about communication and clarity, because I really do, for me, this is what I believe, is that there has to be a common commitment between partners. So in the traditional sense, that might look like, you know, we're in a monogamous relationship. The commitment might be love. We're in love. And then we're going to have sex. And for other people, the commitment might be fun and exploration, you know, no strings attached. And that could be their commitment. You know, they're committed to having fun and enjoying life. And it's just the key is people have to be on the same page. There's got to be clarity and there's got to be communication. So they can both make sure, yeah, absolutely. You know what? I'm just out to have a good time. You know, I'm having sex and it's part of dating and this is what I mean by sex. And yeah, people have to be on the same page and really honest with themselves.
Yeah. So, doctor, I understand, you know, there are some occasions I have heard it a lot of times that, you know, people just jump into sex and then suddenly after the whole night is done, like they feel guilty the next day. And then they don't know what to do, like they're withdrawn or some, you know, some men just shy away and you cannot hear from them anymore. So, what do you think is happening over there?
Yeah, and you know that's a great point, Lorie. And I always talk about that great sex happens the next day, and meaning exactly what you said. If the next day you're feeling guilty, you feel shameful, or there's some fear or something in your space, the sex wasn't good. In the moment, it was probably amazing, but great sex happens the next day. So I always talk to people about, you know, the next day looking back and be like, you know, that was great. You know, I felt really connected with my partner. That was really pleasurable, or that was an expression of love, and I feel, you know, super close to that person, or that was hot and kinky, whatever it is for you. It's the next day that you look back on it. So often, you know, when people suffer, you know, from that and the guilt, the shame, and the fear the next day is actually looking at the decisions that they made leading up to the sexual act and where they were. And I always talk about having, you know, the 3 states that need to be aligned, right? So it's going to be your head, which is, you know, your psychological state, your heart, which is your emotional state, and then your physical state and where you are there. And if those things are aligned, that usually, and then your partners are aligned and you connect with them that way, it's great sex and you can look back on that. What's usually missing if the next day you're looking back, it's you weren't aligned or there was something off, like your head, you know, you were thinking about something, you were stressed, you were wherever you were, and the next day you're like, you know, that wasn't very good, or even after it could be like that wasn't very good. Or your heart, right? And that's a big one for us. It could be, you know, oh, well, I'm just going to have sex because I want to please my partner, or I want to have sex just because I think I should, or because I'm feeling pressured, or because I'm going to get something out of it, or I just want to whatever. And then afterwards, you know, you feel guilty about it. The other thing is, you know, in the moment we're really, you know, aroused, we're attracted to our partner, it's mutual, and it's great and it's amazing. And then the next day, all the messages that we've been taught about sex, the lens that we are taught to look at sex through. And I always say that we have these 3D glasses on and we look at sex that way. And I don't mean like the 3D porn that's out there, but sex as in dirty, dangerous, and degrading. So, you know, in the moment we can have that off, but the next day we look at it and we say, wow, what did last night mean about me? And often what we do is we take our sex and how we choose to sexually express ourselves and we paint a broad brush with that person and of ourselves and the self-stigma. So it's like, oh, well, I had I don't even know, a one-night stand last night, and the next day I feel really crappy, right? And it's that the messaging that we receive that goes on in our head, and we start beating ourselves up, and we start making ourselves wrong because of it. And, you know, it's just that thing. It's like, you know, you can have a one-night stand if you choose to do that, and you choose to do that powerfully. That's great. It doesn't impact who you are as a person, as an employee, as a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, you know, whoever you are, right? Sex is an important part of ourselves, but it shouldn't define us. And so often there's so much significance in stories and scandal that we attach to sex that it really impacts us the next day, and we're looking back on it being like, you know, why did I do that? So, you know, I think there's two approaches. There's one, you know, kind of work through that stuff, and I work through with people on that guilt, shame, and fear, and the make wrong and all the messaging that they've received in it. And you know, on the flip side is just, you know, taking ownership and having the alignment and just checking in. And there's nothing wrong. One of the accesses to great sex is saying no.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is to understanding why you're saying no. To be able to do the mental check and be like, you know, is my heart in it? Is my head in it? You know, am I just doing it to hide from something or pretend something or to mask something? And if you are, you check in, just like, you know, just share with your partner. Be like, hey, you know what? I'm really attracted to you. I'm really turned on. And I'm just not in the space right now to connect with you sexually. And that, you know, doesn't shut down your partner. It's there in the future, but you're just honoring who you are in your own space. And so many people don't do that when it comes to sex, and it leads to bad sex.
Mm-hmm. Okay, those are very important words to you know, ponder upon. So, Lesley, Mars and Venus has been you know, known worldwide, and it talks about, you know, the difference between men and women. So, would you give us some quick and easy to implement tips that our audience can work with to help them in their quest for their one or soulmate?
Absolutely. There's so many characteristics when it comes to the masculine. So, and John Gray describes the masculine as Mars and the feminine as Venus. And so I'm just going to say masculine and feminine because we both have masculine and feminine in us, and it really is a spectrum. So when, you know, if you identify with masculine, two things that I would say that identify with masculine is providing and producing results, like making things happen. And with feminine, it's the opposite. It's receiving, you know, flow and surrender. Now, if it's a man that identifies with masculine, that is a powerful role, and that's where they really identify with. And for women, it really is that loving, nurturing, receiving, flow, surrender. And so much of our lives as women right now is in the masculine, which is producing results, being successful. So when it comes to dating and pursuing that soulmate, men really bond with women, being successful, providing for women, and making them happy. And the good thing about that is that women also bond with men when they find that men provide successfully for them. So it's a perfect match when you're talking about the typical male-female relationship. And so the tip really is that women should really be careful about pursuing men more than they're being pursued. Because all of the passion and the chemistry and the attraction comes with men providing and being successful. And so the whole thing about having sex for the wrong reasons, which Stephen was talking about and you were asking about, you know, having guilt and shame afterwards, is, you know, women could be, you know, say that they're pursuing, you know, love and connection. You have sex or physical intimacy, and then women have this attachment, right? They've got the oxytocin, you know, the physiology of sex has them be bonded to the man. And this can happen for men too. If you don't have the commitment before the intimacy, that you're on the same page, and you have the woman pursuing the man more than the man is pursuing the woman, that's often what has the man, like you said, not call the next day, or because where they get their power is in providing and pursuing the woman.
Yeah. So, doctor, do you have any tips for, singles out there, that they should be able to think about before they actually jump into sex? Because like some people, they don't even know what they want probably.
Yeah, there's, if you're single, and I just want to clarify, are they single and wanting to have sex, and not have a relationship or like a conventional relationship around that, or are they single and dating and wanting to have a relationship?
Yeah, most of the people that are following me are those people who are looking for their soulmate. But of course, like, some people you cannot avoid that they're still undecided what they want. Like, they don't even know if they really want to be in a committed relationship. So like, they're just, looking into things, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, I got that. And there's a number of different levels to look at this, Lori. I mean, first of all is, if you're single and, you're looking to, connect with someone and having, a monogamous relationship, that's amazing. And, how do you approach sex in that? And, it's so important, and I love it that I get to work with you on this, is because it's so important for people to set down really healthy ways to deal with sex and talk about sex early on. Because often what happens is people come to me, when things aren't working or there's issues or there's concerns like years down the road, which, if you deal with them up front and you create that way of relating to your partner and to discussing sex, it'll serve you so much better and avoid so many problems down the road. It's phenomenal. So it's just awesome that I get to be here and talk with you and your followers. So, I mean, I think it's really important, first of all, to sit down and think about who you are sexually and what you want. And initially, it'll just come to you like that. You're like, oh yeah, I want to get married, or I want to wait, 2 months, or this is the right way to do things. And what I always, encourage people to do in the coaching that I do is just look at some deeper levels to it, right? Because sex for a lot of people is like our hand, right? The top of our hand is who we are, and the bottom of our hand is our sex, and it just happens. Right? Just happens. And sex happens, I always joke around, I say, sex happens when we're drunk, when we're in a relationship, or we're on vacation, right? Or a combination of those three. And, it's just to take a moment to like step back and be like, okay, well, this is what I want, and this is what I like. And then, the important questions to start asking is why? Why is that? Because when you start connecting with a partner sexually, you can say, hey, this is the way it's going to be, or this is what I want. And it really helps provide a context is when you can explain to your partner, hey, this is why I want this. Because, this is, what I value, or this is what I'm trying to create in a relationship, or this is, what happened to me in the past and I had a bad experience and I don't want to relive that again with you. So really be able to check in with where you're at. And also like check the kind of three parts, so where your head is at. Am I thinking about this for the long term, or am I not? And where your heart is at. Like, did I just get my heart broken? And I'm not looking for a relationship right now. And then your physicality, like sex is a drive for us. It's a need for human beings. And is that something that, I want to have satisfied, and I want to satisfy with my partners? And what I really encourage people, and it's so difficult to do for some people, is to really honor who they are. Because sex, we've been taught, is good when it's over here. And this is between a man and a woman. It's in a committed relationship with lots of love and lots of emotion, and ideally for the purposes of making babies, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum over here is this one-night stand, emotionless, baseless, just physical connection. And this is wrong, and this is right. And so we're on a spectrum that we're looking at. And what I always talk to people about is there's so many different spots in between that have various levels of emotion, various levels of commitment, various levels of sexual interaction, and people are free to kind of explore that. The other thing that I would look at for people to do is figure out what your what I call your core sexual values are. So what are the things that are most important to you at your core? So what I start off, and sometimes that's a little bit, out there for people, and they're like, core values around my sex, what does that mean? Sex is physical. And so what I always start people on is the three things that work for most people and that are my own is honesty, respect, and safety. And from that, you can build off a number of things. And that's what I call the triad of trust. And in any relationship, sexual, one-night stand, marriage, whatever it is, there has to be a certain level of trust there. And then on top of that, there's beautiful things that you create, which is, love and connection and intimacy and partnership and all these other kind of things that you can build on top of that. But the honesty, respect, and safety are the first three things. And on that, a lot of people think that you're being honest with your partner and you're respecting your partner and what their wishes are and where their boundaries are, and you're safe. So, you're using, safer sex techniques. And that's important, that's part of it. But really what I coach people on is actually the honesty, respect, and safety first starts with yourself. So again, really being honest with who you are and where you're at, respecting that, being like, hey, this is where I'm at, there's nothing wrong with taking ownership of that. And the third one is safety. And it's not necessarily always safer sex techniques, but it's emotional safety and psychological safety. And, just really, like I said, figuring out yourself first before you then step in and be like, okay, this is the relationship that I'm going to have. The other thing that I always like to throw out there, and it kind of makes people think, is even if it's a one-night stand with someone that you've just met, that is a relationship. You are relating to that person on a level that is different from any other or most relationships that you have in your life right now. And there still is an amount of respect, of care, of honesty, of safety that goes on in that relationship. And the more people can be honest with where they're at, what their needs are, and honoring, what's really going on, the easier it is for them to find a match for what that is. And it's also easier for them to avoid the drama, the BS, the hurt, and the upset that's out there. And but it takes a lot for people. It takes a lot for people to be like, hey, I'm looking for a sexual connection with someone, and I really want to explore this aspect of my sexuality, and I want it done in a safe and respectful way. Right? That takes a lot. It's easier to say, hey, I'm looking for my soulmate, and then someone else says, well, I'm looking for my soulmate, and then you two matchy, and really what one person wants is just a sexual connection, and then this person wanted this, and then there's a mismatch, right? So it's just really taking that time, the honesty, respect, and safety, spending that time with yourself, figuring out what you are, figuring out that, hey, sex doesn't have to look like these two ends of the spectrum, and there's a lot of things in between that you can co-create with your partner, and just, being free around that and creating something that really works for you and your partner is the most important thing to just take on. It doesn't have to look like any particular way.
Yeah, so Lesley, can you tell us what are your current projects or programs that people, can work with you, and, how can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Stephen and I have a workshop together, which is The Secrets of Great Sex, where we talk about what it takes to have, the love life and the sex life of your dreams. We call that the Lex life, the love and sex life. And so we do that in Toronto. We're doing it on May 1st. And I also do dating workshops and also one-on-one coaching. So my people, it's easiest to find me on Facebook or on my website, through Mars Venus.
Okay, can you tell us your website again? www.
Mars Venus Coach, Lesley Edwards.
Okay, sounds good. So, Dr. Stephen, maybe you can tell us also your projects and how can people find you and how can they actually connect with you so that they can, more have sex education.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for more information, people can visit my website, which is drdewit.com. So that's DRDEWIT.com. On Twitter, my handle is @DrDewitt, so the @ symbol, and then DRDEWIT. And, some of the projects that I'm excited about, obviously working with Lesley, that's always a lot of fun. We are open and, can travel and visit different places to give that workshop as well. I love to, work in front of big audiences. So one of the things that I'm working with is an online platform right now. So I'm launching a teleseminar in May, and that's really what I'm working on. And, it's going to be, it's a system that I've created. It's called the Sexual Freedom System. And it's really, providing people the access to creating and discovering the sex life that they've always wanted. And that's something that, I really love to do. And I also love doing keynotes. I speak at conferences. I speak at high schools. I speak in the corporate end of things. And, that's, really what I'm about is getting out there and sharing my message and obviously creating that all the time. So that's what I'm up to.
Okay, so it has been awesome, both to have both of you. So you can still share any final words you have, just in case you still have something to share. I'm fine with that.
Lesley?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, Lorii, thank you so much for having us. It's great to interact with other people who are up to what we're up to. And really, my commitment is amazing, delicious relationships. So if this helps anyone create that in their life, that's what I'm all about.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, for me, when it comes to sex, just, I said this before, there's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's just your way. And, the top two things that I always say are so important about sex are communicating. The first one, and all the magical, wonderful things we can do with our mouths when it comes to sex, talking is the most important one and can be the hottest one. The second one is have a sense of humor about it. We add, again, so much importance and so much significance and all this stuff with it. Like, if we keep it a little bit lighter and if we're, able to, create that space where it's not like, oh my goodness, this is what's happening and it's not working and you want to hide about it. It's just, let's just keep it a little bit lighter, and it's a lot easier to talk about and a lot easier, when things don't work out, to be able to look at them and be like, okay, let's go to work on this, because it's an important part of life. We evolve, it's going to change, you're going to have questions, you're going to have issues, you're going to have concerns, and that's normal. It's not this utopian thing that we always think about or are in the movies or in the romance novels or whatever else you're doing. Like, this is real life that we're dealing with. Stuff is going to come up. Love yourself, accept yourself, reach out to experts who can help you with that process, and, you'll be fine.
Okay, there you have it, folks. Thank you so much again, Dr. Steven and Lesley, and I'll see you again sometime next week. You take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.